And welcome back to another episode of the Double Doink Podcast. My name is Brenden. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Our division preview series rolls on, and today we're talking AFC South. A very fascinating division. Didn't think it was going to be this fascinating before I did this exercise, but I'm excited to talk about it with Theo Ash. He is 1/3 of the Stay Hot podcast. He's also joined Pro Football Network. Theo, what's going on?
Not too much. I love the AFC South. There's so many quarterbacks here that I'm just a big fan of. Stroud. I'm a big Lawrence guy, big Richardson guy, and I liked Levis a decent amount coming out of the draft as well. Didn't think he deserved to fall to the second round. So I feel like this is kind of one of the more irrelevant divisions, maybe from a brand standpoint, like the Titans, Jaguars, even the Texans and Colts aren't really huge markets, but it is quietly one of the most interesting divisions, I think, in the entire sport right now.
So it's funny because you were one of the first guests I reached out to do the division preview series, and I think I gave you like 5 divisions, and you chose the AFC South out of all of them. So I thought that was kind of fascinating. I think you had like the AFC West was in there, the NFC East, and you chose this one. So it was pretty funny to me. But you ready to talk about it?
Let's do it.
Okay, so we're going to start with the Houston Texans. Houston Texans come on down. 12th in total DVOA last year, 14th in offensive DVOA, 16th in defensive DVOA. Theo, what is your big question with the Houston Texans offense heading into 2024?
My big question would be, how much did you really add? This team wasn't maybe as good as you remember when you go back and look at the stats. Like you just said, they are outside the top 10 in a lot of offensive statistics. And they didn't run away with this division at all. In fact, they were kind of playing for it at the end versus the Colts, and it took a bit of a collapse from the Jaguars. The Texans, it was no cakewalk for them last year. This year, I feel like that is the expectation. Okay, last year was a grind. It was they were a year ahead of schedule, and they still won the division. Now they've added Danielle Hunter. They've added Stephon Diggs. Is it really going to be so easy this year? I think is my question. I think that they're the most talented team on paper, but Diggs was on a bit of a downturn before they got him. And they added Danielle Hunter, but they lost Jonathan Grenard, who just had a fantastic season. So is this going to, and they added Joe Mixon, I guess, is another big addition I should talk about. But he was almost a cap cut for the Bengals last year. So they added a lot of big names. My question will be, how many wins are they all going to translate to? And I don't really know the answer to that, I guess. I think the range of outcomes it's still pretty big for the Texans.
Yeah, they're one of 2 teams this year in this division that kind of said, okay, we got a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract. Let's go for it. They spent big. And you brought up like they weren't as good as people thought. And a lot of that, in my opinion, had to do with just the running game and maybe a little bit of play calling. Is Bobby Slowick overrated? Who's kind of in my notes here, because if you take a look at last season, they saw the 5th highest rate of loaded boxes last year and had the 6th highest run rate on first half runs. So they continue to run into these loaded boxes. They're 32nd, 31st, and 30th in rush DVOA over the last 3 years. So Bobby Slowick didn't really give CJ Stroud all he could handle, if that makes sense. It was almost like he was babying him a tad. Like, we all saw the talent. And when CJ Stroud was able to throw early, he was very successful, 6 in EPA per play on early down passes. So I feel like if they want to unlock him the most, or give him the most potential to unlock the season, they will flip up their game plan, because there were games I'm watching, I'm going, okay, he was brilliant in the Cleveland Browns game. They torched, that was arguably one of the best defenses of the last 20 years. And then you have that game plan against Indianapolis Colts where it was awful. They couldn't really move the ball against a Gus Bradley defense. So I'm really eyeing Bobby Slowick this year. And if he does take a step up, he will probably be a very hot head coaching candidate. And he actually was this offseason, but he didn't land one.
Yeah. And I thought their game plan in the playoff game against the Ravens was a little bit rough as well. There were so many trick plays. And it's like, look, you've got CJ Stroud. I think your best chance against this defense is to let him throw the ball, not toss it out to a running back so he can throw it or do a double reverse or whatever they were doing. There were a lot of rollouts to the right. It didn't seem like they had the belief last season when they went up against a top defense like the Ravens that they could just drop back and slice people apart. But with CJ Stroud, you do have that ability. So what has happened this offseason suggests that they're going to open it up, let him throw it a little bit more. I have faith that Slowick is smart enough to realize, hey, our run rate shouldn't be so high. They added, why else would you make the Stephon Diggs move if not to throw it a little bit more? But, they also added Mixon. So it's like they did also commit to the ground game a little bit more. I'm 100% with you. Slowick has to prove himself as an elite OC, because as the expectations get higher, Slowick's performance last year isn't going to cut it. He's going to be one of those guys that gets blamed, actually, that the offense isn't top 10, right? If they repeat their results from last season.
Yeah, I didn't really love the Joe Mixon edition. That was one of the ones I kind of was a little not upset about, but a little weirded out about, because Devin Singletary was not terrible for them last year. And I don't think you're getting too much of an upgrade with Joe Mixon there. We'll see. They really wanted him. Like they eyed him. They were the ones willing to make a trade with the Bengals. I don't think many other teams were willing to do that, but we'll see if he can kind of help out. And then of course they added Stephon Diggs, and all signs point to Stephon Diggs being like really well connected with the team. Apparently he's going to be a team captain this year. He's been really connected with CJ Stroud. That he's been one of their his top targets so far in camp. But again, this is camp rumors. You can't really put too much faith into that. But there was a downfall to Stephon Diggs towards the end of last year. He became like an afterthought in that Buffalo Bills offense. But they did play a lot of like outdoor games and crazy weather. I'm really curious to see how this works, because he was actually the biggest switch from player to team this year. I remember the one year we had like Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown, we had all those. This year it was kind of just Stephon Diggs. He was the big trade of the offseason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we'll see. Maybe it was just a Joe Brady thing, and he can, especially coming out the gate, maybe be a little hotter as the season wears on. We get into the playoffs. Maybe the age will start to show itself a little bit more. I feel like I've been a little bit too negative for the Texans this segment. I do believe in CJ Stroud big time. I believe in Nico Collins. Like, if Diggs is the third guy, or if he's not that effective, it's because the other two receivers are just undeniably great. I think when you overlook Tank Dell's size, the fact that he's 165 pounds, what you're left with is one of the most explosive receivers in the entire sport last year. Really special mover, good after the catch. His touchdown, I know it's just preseason, but against the Steelers, already Tank Dell and CJ Stroud connected on a beautiful zone hole shot. And then Tank Dell was breaking tackles and finding his way into the end zone. The Diggs addition won't make the offense worse. It's just that Diggs individually, from a fantasy standpoint or a betting standpoint, do you want to go with his yards opposed to the other two receivers? Because they've got plenty of great weapons in this offense. Even if the ones they added, Mixon and Diggs, don't end up being home run moves, they still got the pieces that they had last year that can make them contend for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, Tank Dell had 3 100-yard games and 7 touchdowns before the injury. He was awesome. And Nico Collins is awesome. He just got a payday. So Stroud has a lot to work with. Now, what's your opinion on these offensive line? Because I think this could be this team's downfall.
The offensive line could be a bit of an issue. They do have Laramie Tunsil, who did a great job on Myles Garrett in the playoffs, as we all remember. But outside of that, definitely some question marks. I don't think Juice Scruggs has been quite the pick that they've imagined him yet. Kenyon Green, a bit of a bust in the first round so far, although I think he has been looking a little bit better in this preseason. We'll see how much that means. We'll see. I think that it could shape up to be an average offensive line. I'm not too overwhelmingly concerned about it. But especially running the football, they really struggled last year. Pass protection, I think, can be okay with Tunsil back there protecting the blind side and Howard, but they've ranked in the bottom 10 teams in terms of rushing efficiency for many, many years now, and this doesn't necessarily look like the offensive line that's guaranteed to bring them out of that range. So I would worry a little bit about them becoming one-dimensional once the playoffs roll around, even with Joe Mixon.
Yeah, they've invested pretty heavily in it too. If you look at Kenyon Green, Juice Scruggs, Titus Howard, and Blake Fisher, their combined average is 39th overall pick. Those are 4 guys that it's time to step up. They did the Shaq Mason trade. That's worked out nice. He's been great. He looked great in preseason so far as well. But Titus Howard struggled in the 7 games and that he played last year. He was banged up. Of course, Kenyon Green didn't play at all last year. Juice Scruggs now moves into center. So it's kind of put up or shut up time for this offensive line. And it makes a difference because CJ Stroud last year, with no pressure, 2nd in EPA per pass. When he was under pressure, 28th in EPA per pass. Of course, it's going to happen with a lot of quarterbacks, but I just think if you have a clean pocket for CJ Stroud, like the sky's the limit for this kid. So if there's going to be a downfall for this offense or this team, I think it could be the offensive line. All right, anything else on the offense?
No, I think we've covered it pretty well in the offense. It should be pretty good. It should be pretty good. Just in the preseason, you can see that Stroud is almost, he certainly is hitting some of the most impressive throws in his short stint as a starting quarterback, making an appearance. He's like hit crazy throw after crazy throw. So it'll be crazy throw after crazy throw in the regular season. And I think that they'll be a little bit Bengals-esque with how this team is built. They've got their Burrow, they've got their 3 receivers, and that's been a pretty good formula up in Cincinnati. It should be a pretty good formula for Houston, at least on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, he was so fun to watch last year. I'm really excited for his second year. And usually quarterbacks take the second year leap, right? Like this is a year where quarterbacks are almost at their best. We've seen it with a lot of guys. Like as an Eagles fan, I saw with Carson Wentz, and then he was never the same. But like there's a lot of examples outside of Wentz where like the second year is where you have your best season, arguably maybe of your career. All right, defensive side of the ball. What are you looking at with the Houston Texans on defense?
I mean, I gotta wonder what Derek Stingley Jr.'s ceiling is after, again, going back to the preseason. I know he's a starter playing in a preseason game. Don't want to take too much away from it. But he came in against the Giants he did jump the first route, should have had a pick 6 there. Then later in the game, he has a beautiful pick, tracking it over his shoulder, erases a go ball. This guy had 5 interceptions last year, made some of the most incredible plays you will ever see from a corner in the back half of last season. So many plays. He was a cover 3 guy, squeezing the seam, ranging all the way over and making the diving interception. Did it a couple times. This guy was an incredible player as a freshman at LSU, got banged up, still was a top 5 draft pick and seems to be living up to that potential. My number one question is just how good can he be and how many times can he take the ball away in 2024 if he's healthy?
I'm sure you saw him against Daniel Jones at the preseason.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah. But, there's a lot of bad quarterbacks out there to take advantage of.
Yeah, it was Daniel, poor guy, because Daniel Jones was just getting heat on social media, and a lot of it to do with just Derek Stingley making amazing plays. So, yeah, can he be like a top 3 corner in the league last year? He was pretty damn good. Like, he's starting to look like that guy that they invested 3rd overall. 54% of targets were caught last year, which is pretty good. And he forced an incompletion on 21% of targets. That's 6 out of 130 qualifying cornerbacks, and he's kind of going into his prime right now. And my big question is just my big question was on the investment at edge rusher. We'll get to a sec, but where are you on like a Kamari Lassiter? Like who do you think should start across from him? Because it looks like Lassiter's winning that job. D'Amico Ryans is hyping him up quite a bit, but he's a rookie and he fell in the draft because of doesn't have the greatest athletic profile.
No, he doesn't. But I am a Kamari Lassiter fan. It's the one thing I think that this defense could use one more of to really complete it is another really disruptive coverage body, because you can always throw it away from Stingley, and that had a lot of success last year. Kamari Lassiter was the most effective corner in the SEC last year, led the entire nation, I think, in EPA when targeted or lack thereof. It was wholly unsuccessful to throw at him in college. And he
38.5% completion rate, the best in the SEC. So, yeah.
Yeah, and he did it against some really good competition. His matchup with Luther Burden was decisively won by him. That's nice to see. And Burden is a pretty fast, athletic dude. And the 4.640 didn't seem to affect Lassiter there, although it certainly has affected a lot of corners. You don't see that type of athletic profile starting in the league too often. But Lassiter has rare results, and I think he has some traits that can make up for it. This guy is as calm as I've ever seen at the catch point. So even if he's behind, he can make up some ground, get his head around at the last second and make a play on it as good as anybody I've ever watched. And he's very physical as well. So if he needs to, I think he's got some inside-out versatility where you could have him in the slot. He can go up maybe against some slower bodies, not have quite as much ground to cover vertically with a safety over top of him. Worry a little bit more about the flats. I think he'd be really good in that role, and I think he can survive on the boundary as well. I really liked that pick in the 2nd round. So maybe he's the X factor for the team this year in a positive way.
Yeah, it sounds like D'Amico Ryans singled him out in his draft, and like that was kind of his guy. Usually a coach gets 1 or 2 per draft where they bang the table, and they tell the scouts, like, get this guy on our defense, and it sounds like he was the one because he's winning the job in training camp. And D'Amico Ryans, like I said, is hyping up. If you look at some quotes, just type in Kamari Lassiter on Twitter and listen to what D'Amico has to say about him. Pretty cool. So they really like the rookie. It looks like he's going to start across fill out the secondary. Jalen Petrie, looking for him to have a big third year, and then Jimmy Ward is the other safety there. They also like Kalen Bullock behind and some depth. The edge rusher was my big question with this team because they've invested heavy in it. Of course, they drafted Will Anderson. They traded up for him. They gave up future draft capital to go up and get him. And then they signed Danielle Hunter over Jonathan Grenard, who is a fan favorite on the Double Doink podcast. I'm been a big Jonathan Grenard guy my entire time of hosting this podcast. I've been banging the drum saying that he's very underrated. He had a little bit of injury issues last year, but he still had really good efficiency stats and had 12.5 sacks. And then Danielle Hunter continues to just play well. He showed no signs of slowing down. 68 pressures last year, 16.5 sacks. I was funny. I was going like, could this be like the J.J. Watt, Whitney Merciless duo of 2015 where both of them were dominant? Like this is what Texans fans are hoping for because they spent big money. They're guaranteed money in future years too because he is also getting up there in age.
Yeah. And I do think it's a bit of an upgrade, at least in the short term. Danielle Hunter is still a beast. This guy has every move in his arsenal as a pass rusher, and maybe some ones that no one else has considering his athletic profile, just how long his arms are. That kind of physical dominance and then a mind that is good countering when he initially gets stymied. He can win late in the rep. He has a nasty spin move that I don't know if Grenard quite has that type of bag yet in his career. So I do think that edge rushing group is going to be ferocious if Will Anderson takes any kind of step. Wasn't maybe an A+ pass rusher all of last year, but definitely had plenty of wins while being an elite run defender. If he takes a leap and they get a little bit more out of Hunter, man, they're going to be collapsing the edges every time. But I do worry a little bit about the interior of the defensive line. They signed Danico Autry as well this offseason. That was a big investment from them. He got suspended for 6 games for PEDs. And now there is a bit of a question mark about who could, he can kind of kick inside. He's a big body. Now Mario Edwards Jr. is forced into that starting lineup. That's not exactly what you're looking for a starter. Falaranzu Fatukasi is someone who can stop the run fine, but really offers you nothing as a pass rusher. Who's going to provide that interior push? And who's going to push this defense over the top? Kind of the same thing as the offense. Last year, the offense was really good. Everybody loved them. Everybody loved the big names, but they were outside the top 10. Kind of the same thing with the defense. Everybody loved D'Amico Ryans, several breakout players on the defense, Stingley, Anderson, but they weren't a top 10 defense. Who is going to give them the juice to go from good to really great? Because right now they've kind of upgraded, but they're still constructed the same as they were last year. Strengths at the same spots, weaknesses, I think, at the same weaknesses. It's just what is going to change exactly? Like, who's going to break the mold?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're banking like Will Anderson to take that second-year leap. And the Danico Autry thing, I think, is huge. Like, you brought up the depth behind it. Like, Tim Settle really hasn't been good since, 2021. He's on the depth chart. Like, Danico Autry has been under the radar, very dominant from the interior, double-digit sacks in 4 of the last 6 seasons, 12% pressure rate over the last 3 years. He's been very underrated. And to lose him for 6 games in a team that's, needs to compete or needs to win this year to kind of have success, I guess, outlook success from other people. I think it's an underrated loss. And you're right. I think that's the big question mark on the defense. All right, my breakout player was Kamari Lassiter. We've already hyped him up a lot, so I guess I'll pass him to you. Who was your breakout player for this team?
Azeez Al-Shaair is someone that I'm looking for. D'Amico Ryans. Got that name confused there for a second. D'Amico. But he's done a lot of great work with linebackers. Christian Harris was probably the worst linebacker in the league before Ryans got there. Looked more and more competent as last season went on. Al-Shaair was fantastic as the third linebacker on the field when Ryans was the coordinator in San Francisco. There's no doubt in my mind he could have been a very good starter there if he wasn't behind the best 2 linebackers probably in the league, the best duo. He went to Tennessee, had a pretty good year. Now he's back behind a good defensive line, back with D'Amico Ryans. Could he reach the potential he kind of flashed in San Francisco as a starter? He's got an opportunity to do it this season. He's someone who could contend for some accolades maybe for the first time in Houston this year.
Yeah, he got paid off of that season in San Francisco, right? Like he signed, well, he didn't get paid, but he's got a starting level position after succeeding with D'Amico Ryans in 2022. And he turned Blake Cashman last year and he got paid, right? Blake Cashman was awful in 2022, and then D'Amico Ryans completely resurrects his career. So the linebacking core on this team, like Christian Harris, like you said, hasn't been very good. So I'm always going to give D'Amico the benefit of the doubt to kind of figure out the linebacker room. Okay, I'll start prediction time. Houston Texans. I have them winning this division. Theo, love it. Like I think everyone needs to pump the brakes a little bit on the Texans type this offseason. Like I think they're like 4th in Super Bowl odds right now, something along those lines. Like they are one of the hot teams that everyone thinks is going to win it all. But I have them winning the AFC South. I have them finishing 4th in the AFC, but I do think they're getting a tad overrated. I just want to see another year of Bobby Slowick and this Stroud offense working with a healthy offensive line before I kind of crown them up with the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Ravens, who I think are going to be the 3 teams ahead of them. So first AFC South, 10-7, 4th in the conference.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think that 10 wins is a good mark. Maybe I'll say 11 win the division. And yes, I think they're a very safe bet to be good. But like I said earlier, I don't know if they've quite taken the leap yet that a lot of people are kind of baking in to their expectations. I think they've done enough where they'll be able to sustain this success that they found last year. But did they do enough to win the Super Bowl now? I'm not quite sure, because that Ravens game was pretty ugly. Mm-hmm. And if they run into a team like that again, is it going to be a decisive Texan victory or Texans victory at all? I don't know if they quite match up with those types of teams just yet.
Yeah, their pass defense, opposing pass defenses get easier. They're supposed to be playing the 20th ranked DVOA passing defenses over the season, so maybe that can help. Like I think they're going to be obviously exciting and whatnot, but I think it missed me with like the 4th Super Bowl odds. Like I think the hype's getting a little too overblown. All right, Indianapolis Colts, come on down. 20th in total DVOA, 13th in offensive, 20th in defensive last year. Theo, what's your big question on the offensive side of the ball for the Indianapolis Colts?
It's got to be Richardson, right? I mean, He's got so much potential, but just showed really... I can't say that he showed nothing last year, because he really did provide a spark. It was just for such a small sample size, you don't know what's just noise and what's not. I know from a fantasy perspective, he was the number 1 in points per drop back because of his rushing upside. And he had some nice passing moments as well against the Rams, hit some throws that were alien. You maneuvered
Rams
around.
Game, man. That Rams game is just, you can't go on Twitter, can't go on social media without someone saying that he's the best quarterback in the league because of that one Rams game.
That one Rams game, I know. That 4 verts versus Josh Downs, where he put it right back shoulder, top shelf, where the underneath defender couldn't get it. Well, one where he maneuvered around Aaron Donald and threw 4 verts and it was caught. The 2-point conversion where he juked Donald out again and scored. There aren't a lot of other quarterbacks able to hit those types of throws. And he's with a offensive coordinator that has engineered the breakout of Justin Herbert, that has engineered the breakout of Jalen Hurts, that scores 23 points per contest, like every time he calls an offense, it seems, in a multitude of different situations, different teams. He always seems to have these offensive results. I think the ceiling is pretty high. I love their receiving room with Pittman, Josh Downs, who was great in a small sample size last year, and Adonai Mitchell. Jonathan Taylor added to the fold as well. Him and Anthony Richardson only shared the field for 1 carry all of last season. Now that's probably going to be north of 200, right? If they both can stay healthy. Who knows what type of effect that's going to have. And this was a team that was only a game out last season. I know that was a little bit lucky. Like you mentioned, they were 20th in DVOA. Maybe shouldn't, if you did it again in the exact same circumstances, they probably wouldn't be so close. But it's not the exact same circumstances. They're adding one of the most explosive quarterback talents we've ever seen, and Latu as well on the defensive side. I know we're going with offense here. I really like the Colts. I think they could easily take this division away from the Texans. They're real threats to me.
Shane Steichen having this team winning 9 games last year, like with Anthony Richardson only playing 4, is mind-boggling to me. Like to turn Gardner Minshew in like this RPO master, they spammed that over and over and over again. 18% of the time they were in RPO. That was first in the NFL by quite a wide margin. They just ran shotgun 11 personnel RPO. So that's what they did, and it worked. And look, I've watched, as an Eagles fan, I have watched Gardner Minshew lead my team, and it is not very fun as a fan to watch. Like I I feel horrible for Las Vegas Raiders fans. I'm sorry if you're a Raiders fan listening and you're excited about this year, but it's going to come crashing down when you watch him play quarterback. Like I know he can do the little things right and he's not terrible, but he's just a boring player. And for Steichen to be able to just do this, to have a 13th in offensive DVOA with him, in my opinion, is one of the better coaching jobs of last season. But you are right, like a tad overrated. They were 20th in total DVOA, so were they really a 9-8 team? Analytically, DVOA has them projected to win 6.4 games this year. So there are some like analytic numbers that are pushing against the Colts, but it all comes down to Anthony Richardson, like you said. Are you worried at all about it being his throwing shoulder that he hurt, right? Because the Denver game didn't look too pretty. There's already some people pointing against his preseason stuff. I know he had like 4 attempts, and I know you're shaking your head right now, but like to me, that would be my biggest worry. Like he's already had accuracy issues, and it was to his throwing shoulder. Like how hyped can we be about him? I guess is my question.
I'm definitely worried about him staying healthy. I don't know if I'm so worried about him injuring the same shoulder or what, but just with everything that happened, because it wasn't just the shoulder. He had concussions. He was in and out of games. He was constantly, even when he was healthy, he was constantly banged up. And he's only played 18 games since high school. Like he didn't play very much at Florida either. I worry a little bit. I look at like Trey Lance's career. He was someone I was very excited about. He had all the tools, and his career just never quite got off the ground because he was unlucky and inexperienced and never quite got to build that. If Richardson doesn't play this year, I think it'll be tough to ever say, I think at that point it'll be just too few games. He needs to stay healthy this year, and it is something I'm worried about. But I'm not worried about the Broncos preseason game at all. Like the play that everybody was pointing to, like, oh, he can't pass, he can't throw, look at how inaccurate he is. There were 2 meshing crossing routes, and the guys got caught up, and he threw it. His tight end kind of stopped the running, and the defensive back overtook the route. These are the kinds of nuances that can be missing in the preseason. A poor spacing downfield resulting in an errant throw. It doesn't mean Anthony Richardson can't throw the ball or is totally inaccurate or is worthless. I'm a big believer in Richardson. I have been since Florida. I don't think that the thing that gets me the most excited about him is always his pocket presence, how he's able to stand in there and avoid sacks. He's been doing it at an elite level since Florida. And I thought that all continued to look good in the preseason game, how he was standing in there with his eyes downfield. So if he has that, plus the rushing upside, plus the ability to hit the 1% throws, and Shane Steichen will deliver him a bunch of easy ones with all the RPOs that they'll call, right? It's not that hard to be accurate if you just make the decision and throw it into the flat real quick to Josh Downs or one of these great weapons running a slant. Like, there will be manufactured completions that I believe will keep him above 60% on the completion rate. So I'm very excited about Richardson and this offense. I like everybody really involved with it. So I think their ceiling is very high. I think they do have an Eagles type of ceiling. I mean, no one expected Jalen Hurts to be what he was, right?
Yeah.
The weapons are, I don't know if anybody's an A.J. Brown here, but Mitchell's pretty damn athletic, So I think that they could be real dark horses to win and go deep in the playoffs.
I know I'm getting too deep into the weeds here, and maybe I'm galaxy braiding this, but I really like I think an underrated hire this offseason was they hired Cam Turner, who is his quarterbacks coach, who used to work with Cam Newton in Carolina, and he worked with Kyler Murray in Arizona. He has history of working with these similar type of quarterbacks. I know Kyler Murray is not similar, but they have similar attributes, just not the same size, of course. Yeah. But they similar arm, they can run. So I thought that was that kind of swum under the radar. And Cam Turner's been in every interview. I've seen a bunch of quotes from him, when I was running the news desk at the Score, seeing them hype him up. He's been very positive about what he's seen from Anthony Richardson. And you brought up the weapons in the run game. He has a lot to work with here. Adonai Mitchell, if he didn't have some kind of off-field stuff, I think he would have been higher in the draft. Michael Pittman Jr. seems to just get better and better every single year. Josh Downs is dealing with an ankle injury. We'll see if he can come back healthy and full blast, but he looked really good in his rookie season. He looks like he has a lot of potential, and I think it's one of the more underrated offensive lines in the NFL as well. Ryan Kelly was first in the NFL as a center in pressure rate allowed last season. He wants a new contract, and the Colts are basically telling him no, and they're openly fighting about it, which is kind of must be frustrating for him, but he's still a starting center. Quentin Nelson he's not, I think his play's getting a tad overrated now, but he's still one of the better guards in the NFL. And Bernard Raymond has popped. This is a guy that this is one of Ballard's got picks that have hit in the first round really hard because he was not looking good at the start. And now he's flashed into one a pretty good pass blocking offensive tackle. So I think Anthony Richardson is everything he could want on this offense, including the coaches and the players.
Yeah, no doubt. They've got a high ceiling. And then on defense, like, I just think they've crushed the last two drafts just in general, because I love the Latu pick this year. I don't know how you felt about him.
I wasn't high as on general on all the edge rushers. I didn't like the profile, like he was an older guy, injured. I'm kind of an ageist when it comes to the NFL draft. I don't like my guys being 24 years old, but at the same time, like, I think he's looked great in camp. He's getting a ton of praise from guys in training camp. And he looked pretty good in preseason. They're going to be relying heavy on him. And my question on the defensive side of the ball is, can the pressure keep up? Because they were 26 in pressure rate last year and 5th in sacks. So like could that come back down to earth a little bit? And Ebukam is done for the year, and he was their highest. I know you can say what you want about PFF grades, but he was their highest graded PFF defender last year, and he was damn good. And they had 4 guys with 8+ sacks, and now one of them is gone. Maybe Latu can fit that in, but Latu has the profile kind of Jalen Phillips. He's a little older than Jalen Phillips coming out of college, but very similar profile, that was hurt and like popped in their last season. Same school, right? They both are UCLA, I believe, right? So
yeah, they did.
Yeah, so they're very similar profiles, and Jalen Phillips has looked pretty damn good so far in the NFL.
Yeah, that's exactly who Latu reminds me of, is Jalen Phillips, just a technician coming off the edge. And his profile is a bit concerning. Like, he doesn't maybe have the highest end first step, and he is a little bit older, but part of that is because he had to medically retire, not because he wasn't good before, right? He lost a year and then came back. And even before this most recent season, Latu was absolutely cooking the rest of the Pac-12 and graded out as an elite player. So the fact that he did it twice in a row and stayed healthy both of these years made me feel a bit better about him. Ebukam's loss hurts, though. He was very, very good for them last year. Nice blend of speed and power. He beat Tristan Wirfs even a few times when they played the Buccaneers for some sacks. That always stuck out to me. So, yeah, replacing him is not going to be easy. But they do have a lot of talent. They have Adetomiwa Adebawore.
Yeah, I saw. So he was going to be my breakout player. I saw you made a TikTok about him, and that fired me up because I wrote about him, and he was in my 10 under the radar prospects piece in 2023 draft. Sorry. I loved him coming out of college out of Northwestern. I thought he was so underrated. He is a freak. Like, he's got 33.7 and 8/8" arms, 81 and 5/8" wingspan. Sorry. He had a 1.5 sacks as a rookie, but he didn't play a ton. He could play all across the line. He played outside the tackle at Northwestern. He could play inside the tackle. And from your TikTok that he posted, he looks damn good in preseason so far.
His flashes this preseason. He has a rush on Quinn Miners that is unbelievable. He kind of rocks him back and forth, goes inside, and then swims back out. And I don't know if there's an offensive lineman alive that could have stayed in front of I learned his last name, and then I immediately forgot.
Adetomiwa Adebawore.
Yeah, Adetomiwa. Yes. So with guys like him and Latu and Pay had a good amount of sacks last year. Buckner has always been a lead. Grover Stewart's a great run defender, although he really gives you nothing as a pass rusher. I do like their front, but my question would be, look, if the Texans defense does take another step, can the Colts keep up? Because D'Amico Ryans is a lot more creative, in my opinion, a better defensive play caller than Gus Bradley is. Mr. Cover, here comes Gus Bradley, and it's just cover three. Yeah, it's a lot like how
the NFL seems to have passed him a little bit, right? Like, he's just not really
definitely
adapting. Yeah,
and I get it. Like, that's how I play NCAA 25. I know I'll use the linebacker. I know my hook zone. I know, like, I know what I can expect. I can play fast, and that's his whole philosophy, right? Look, cover 3 is all you need. I could see the vision there, but no, I think other defenses just have a higher ceiling because they have more ambition. He just kind of sits in the same zone all the time. And the secondary is a little bit questionable. They were rumored to go after L'Jarius Sneed, and the whole fan base was very mad when they didn't.
There was that one Twitter reporter who said that they had him, and then he didn't. And then
they didn't.
Yeah. I have in my notes here, like, I don't think the average NFL fan can name one Colts cornerback outside of Kenny Moore. Like, I know Juju Brents because I liked him coming out. But like, he really needs to break out for this team to have success. I really don't understand, Theo, why this wasn't a Justin Simmons or a Stephon Gilmore team. I don't get why Chris Ballard was sitting back and just allowing this, because pass defense was an issue last year. It's been an issue under Gus Bradley. They're 26 in defensive success rate under Gus Bradley. So they're sticking with him, and they should just give him more talent. Like, when he was successful in Seattle, he had all the talent of the freaking world. And right now, His system needs better players to work, and I just don't see it here.
Yeah, I know that Ballard said, it looks a lot like our offensive line room last year, right? He was like, oh, no one, everybody poo-pooed that room. But then what happened? Bernard Raymond got better. Braden Smith got better. Will Freeze. Maybe that can happen to the secondary, but I think if you know what coverage you're going to be in and the corners are bad, like there's going to be some problems. And I do think that this defense will certainly cap out lower than the Texans this year. That's kind of what keeps them below Houston for me.
Yeah, Julian Blackmon has played already. He's had some health issues. He's a guy of career I've always followed because the Lions took the draft pick they got from the Darius Slay trade with the Eagles and flipped it to the Colts, and the Colts selected Julian Blackmon. So I've always just had like an interesting eye on Julian Blackmon's career just as an Eagles fan base, see how he's doing. And he's been all right, but there's just some injury issues. So he's a safety back there that's still young and can pop. But I don't know. Like Nick Cross is the one that hit Josh Downs in practice. Fans hate him. He's projected to start right now at free safety. He was a former third-round pick as well. So, like you said, I think Ballard kind of makes sense there. It does remind me a little of their offensive line. They're just relying on some guys to take the next step. But damn, this really felt like a Justin Simmons team to me or a Stephon Gilmore team to me, and they missed it. All right, my breakup player was Adetomiwa Adebawore. We already discussed him. Who do you got?
I got the same guy. It's just
Nice.
He's a defensive tackle that runs a 4.4, dude. Like, history won't remember how many hours you worked, what your job was. They'll remember if you picked him as your breakout player, because you only live once, and you might as well bet on someone popping like that with those kinds of tools. I was looking at his numbers last year. He only played 3 third downs all season last year. 2 pressures, though, and a sack. So his efficiency is really off the charts there.
Yeah, he was a raw player coming in. They was basically like a redshirt freshman style season. Like they were gonna ease him in early, but now with they're gonna need him. So I'm really excited. I have like 6.5, 7 sack potential here in my notes, maybe even more than that if he really pops like we think he can. All right, my prediction time. I'm a little down on the Colts this year. They're a very trendy hipster team this year. A lot of like analytic guys and film guys are all over them. It sounds like you also think that they can make the playoffs. I have them missing the playoffs. I went back between 3rd and 4th in the division because there's a team that we're going to talk about later that I have kind of more higher on than I expected. But I'm just with the Anthony Richardson thing. I'll see it when I believe it. The Rams game was fun. I get it, but like I can't get there yet. Like I don't have enough to go off of to say Anthony Richardson is going to be a top 5 quarterback. Is it possible? 100%. But I have issues about him staying healthy. I have issues with this defensive secondary, and I think there's better teams in this division. So I have them going 3rd or 4th in the AFC South, and I have them missing the playoffs.
I think they're going to make it. I don't know if they quite beat the Texans, but I'm going to say 10 wins, they make the wild card, and they finish 2nd in this division.
All right. So we got 2 teams left, the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Tennessee Titans, and we'll discuss them right after this.
The Double Doink Podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Life is hard. It's especially hard when you don't have someone you can open up to. Not everyone is comfortable talking to their friends and family about their personal matters or anything that is bothering them on a day-to-day basis. Mental health is so important to continued success in this world. Therapy is a great way to regroup and get everything off your chest. Insert BetterHelp. BetterHelp is the largest online therapy service, 100% online. They will match you with a professional licensed therapist you can trust. You can talk with your therapist however you see fit, via text, phone call, or video chat. BetterHelp has successfully helped over 4 million people worldwide deal with their day-to-day mental health issues. Use the link in the podcast description to get 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.
And we're back on the Double Doink Podcast. We're going to continue with the AFC South. Next up is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Come on down. 10th in total DVOA last year, 18th in offensive DVOA, 10th in defensive DVOA. Theo, what are you looking at with this offense led by Doug Peterson and your boy, Trevor Lawrence?
He is my boy. Trevor Lawrence is a breakout waiting to happen. I know people think he hasn't earned anything. His contract is terrible. He's no better than Daniel Jones. When you look at the numbers, I've seen the graphics. I've seen it all. But Trevor Lawrence is a very capable franchise quarterback, I think. But my biggest question here is, what was up with them this offseason? Are they trying to keep this team down? They signed their entire offensive line back after it was not good last season. they signed Gabe Davis, who really struggled in a great opportunity as the wide receiver 2 in Buffalo. Now he's supposed to be the wide receiver 2 in Jacksonville, and we're expecting better results. It's like, what exactly was the plan here? Like, where did you improve? I guess the only place it could really come from in a big way is Brian Thomas Jr. So I guess that's the main thing that I'm looking at is can he be Trevor Lawrence's Jamar Chase or something like that?
Yeah, they kind of rated back a little bit. Like, and they tried to even more with Calvin Ridley. Like, they offered him a deal, and then he decided to bolt. So I actually think that might have been for the better because he wasn't too good last year. So I'm with you on the T-Law thing. Like, I think he's getting way too much hate. I thought the contract was completely fine. It was needed. Like, I don't know what else were you going to do. Were you going to move off him? Were you going to go into a contract fight with him? Like, were you going to get him and his agent all riled up? Like, you had no choice. This was what teams do. You draft a guy first overall. He shows you that he has the talent, which I believe he has. You pay him. So the whole Daniel Jones thing is nuts. And like, before week 13 last year, so before he suffered the injury that kind of hampered him, and when Jacksonville fell apart, he was 5th in success rate. Christian Kirk and Cam Robinson also got hurt right after that. He dealt with an offensive line that was 29th in pass block win rate, 28 drops, most ever by a quarterback in the last 3 seasons from his wide receivers. Trevor Lawrence, I believe you threw out the stat on a Trevor Lawrence video on TikTok that I dug up, and I believe I saw it from you posted as well. He lost 58 EPA per play or EPA in general, by receiver error. It's a stat called receiver error, and it takes the efficiency that they lose. And the average was 21 for a quarterback. So he was like in hell with the people around him.
Yeah, there's that video floating around that Ian Hartitz made of the almost touchdowns. Mm-hmm. It really is unbelievable how many just couldn't quite connect on. And I'm very, very excited about the addition of Brian Thomas Jr., who scored 17 touchdowns for LSU last year. That's a quarter of his catches, and he can score from anywhere. In the red zone, he can take it to the house from way outside the red zone. He's got the afterburners. Last season, they desperately tried to make the Calvin Ridley thing work. Calvin Ridley got more targets in the end zone than any other receiver in the red zone last season. So they had a number one that they tried to force feed the ball in and score touchdowns, but it just wasn't to be. Like, he wasn't paying them off. Now they've got the most prolific scorer in, like, maybe not, I don't know my history, but I can't imagine there's been too many college wide receivers to score more than 17 in a single season. Mm-hmm. So to add a guy like that,
20 last year, right? Or did Neighbors have? Or Neighbors had 14 actually. Neighbors had 14. I think he had more touchdowns than.
I think he did.
Yeah, Neighbors I believe had 14. I could be. Yeah.
Maybe Neighbors did have 20. He had 4. Yeah, you're right. 14. Yeah, 14. So yeah, it's. I mean, I'm very high on the fantasy potential of Brian Thomas Jr. But still, is this a complete receiving core? Like with Gabe Davis is your other boundary guy, Christian Kirk already banged up. We'll see. But I don't know. It's a good offense. It's. I think it can repeat what it did last year. But like, they just invested so much in linemen that just don't really do much for me. They traded for Ezra Cleveland and then gave him a big contract. Like, can you not replace a guy like his talent in the draft?
He was not good when they acquired him. Like, he was not the Minnesota guy that they got.
Brandon Scherf hasn't been what he was expected to be. They've extended Cam Robinson, like he's still their starter. I like Anton Harrison a lot, though. I'll say that.
Yeah, 0 sacks allowed in the last 9 games. He really started to come on, and he was a project coming in, but he was forced to start right at the gate. So it took a little bit. It took a little bit of time, but he popped. I hate to say it because Dougie P got me my Super Bowl. Love you forever, Big Doug. But I do think like the route combinations didn't help Trevor Lawrence a lot, and I do think he needs to adapt a little bit. Like, I think the scheme is kind of getting a tad outdated, and he fired every single freaking coach around him possible except for Press Taylor. I don't know what Press Taylor has on the Jacksonville Jaguars blackmailed, or he has Doug Pearson blackmailed, because Doug and Press just go wherever Doug goes, Press goes, and somehow Denver gets fired by Doug, and he is clearly not a top level offensive coordinator. He was terrible towards the end in his tenure in Philadelphia, and now he's stuck around after firing the defensive coordinator Mike Caldwell, who had, like I said, the 10th ranked schedule adjusted efficiency in the league defense last year with Jacksonville, and like every other offensive coach was fired around him. I don't get the Press Taylor thing with Doug Peterson, and I really wish they moved on from him. But I think they're like you said, they just brought back all the offensive linemen. I do think there's like you could get a bump from Anton Harrison. Maybe Mitch Morse still has some left in the tank, and he can be better because it was Fortner. Fortner was terrible last year, so he can't be any worse than him. So I'm bullish on this Jags offense this year. I think Dougie goes to the lab, watches a little more film, doesn't party as much in the offseason. And I do think that this offense can pop. I do think it has like top 7 potential. And I'm with you with Brian Thomas Jr. I love him coming out of LSU. He's like big, he's fast. I think in other drafts, like this guy would have been a top 10 pick, but there was such a loaded wide receiver draft where he just fell to 23 in Jacksonville's lap. And I think he's going to work well. And yeah, like you said, get him in fantasy because I think he's going to pop.
No doubt. Yeah, I don't know what Press Taylor has on it either. The game plans last year weren't good. Trevor Lawrence had a faster time to throw than anyone not named Tua Tagovailoa last year. I just thought it was a little bit of a conservative offense. Like they didn't really know how to get Travis Etienne the ball because they couldn't run, so they just kind of dumped it off to him a lot quickly. I'd like to see Lawrence holding it a little bit more, throwing it a bit farther down the field next year. I think it can happen, but again, just not enough changed on this offense where I'm like, oh yeah, this is the Jaguars here, even though I do like Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah. Like T-Law can, like there's some stats where you can get better, and I'm assuming that this stuff that he's looking at this offseason, like he was 37th out of 40 feet quarterbacks in accurate percentage when he was under pressure, 32nd in EPA per play. So like I think he needs to get better when stuff's coming at him. Maybe a better offensive line can help, and I'm assuming that's the stuff that you can work on and get better at. And it sounds like Trevor Lawrence, like he's not the type of guy that's just gonna get his money and frig off. Like he'll go to the lab. Like I'm bullish on him this year and bullish on the Jags offense. Let's move over to the defense. And like I said, they fired Mike Caldwell after having the 10th best DVOA defense, bringing Ryan Nielsen. I like Ryan Nielsen. However, the Falcons defense was 24th in DVOA last year. That's a defense that he ran. They were 5th in dropback EPA. They were pretty good against the pass, but they played some terrible quarterbacks. He was pretty good as a defensive coordinator of the Saints in 2022. This is an interesting out and in with Caldwell out and Nielsen in my opinion, because I don't know what you're really going to get here. I don't know what Doug Pearson was searching for. He's a Dennis Allen guy, Dennis Allen disciple. So what's your biggest question with the Jaguars defense?
My biggest question is who outside of Tyson Campbell is going to cover anybody? They lost Darius Williams this offseason. They lost their safety Jenkins to Seattle, right? Why did you lose them? And who'd you replace them with? Ronald Darby, Darnell Savage. These were frustrating players. Like, at least in Savage's case, he was a frustrating player last year. Did you really upgrade there, or did you just stay the same or even get worse?
Well, you're a Packers guy. He hasn't been good since, what, like 2021? Like, in one good year, basically?
Yeah, no. I mean, he's not that reliable of a safety coming downhill and tackling anybody. He can, take some bad chances in coverage sometimes. Like, I'm just not... I like the pass rush. I like, obviously, Josh Hines-Allen, who had 17 sacks last year.
Trayvon Walker. Hines in there. You're adding the Hines in there.
Trayvon Walker gets slandered as the most forgettable, boring, mundane first overall pick ever. And that's probably true. But he did have 10 sacks last year, and his pressure rate improved. Like, it's not impossible that he becomes a very disruptive player. 12.7% pressure rate last year, 19 total knockdowns. That's sacks and hits combined. That's a pretty good number to be at for him. So him and Allen, I think, can get to the quarterback. It's just, I don't think the secondary took losses they didn't need to take. You could have brought guys back and been better. And for some reason, I just don't like how they handled that whole position. So my question is, how's it all going to work out? Like, maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, Tyson Campbell dealt with some, I think it was hamstring, a couple soft tissue injuries last year that did hamper him. He allowed 127 pass rating allowed, but we've seen him play really well, and I think he deserved the contract extension. So he's clearly their best player in the secondary. Andre Sisco's been about above average safety for them, but you're right. Like, they're doing the Ronald Darby thing. Ronald Darby's been on 6 different teams in 10 years. Hilarious career. But he played well for Baltimore last year, but everyone played well for Baltimore last year. So we'll see if he can kind of bring that level over. And then the pass rush, the Trayvon Walker thing's hilarious because he was the most under talked about first overall pick, and he had 6 sacks in his last 4, or he had 6 sacks in his last 4 games, 10 sacks in total. This is a guy that popped and not getting a lot of talking points on Big Talk TV or any podcast because everyone, like you said, everyone forgets that he was the top overall pick. I think I think this could be his year. Like, this could be where you get to 12. the 13 sacks. He obviously has the potential. He's got the arm length. He's got the size. He's got the speed. He's got all the intangibles. You brought up his pressure rate. So, like, if Josh Allen, I'll add the Hines in. He wants reporters to call him Hines Allen. So I'll call him Josh Hines Allen. If he can pop again, 17.5 sacks last year, Theo, he had 44% of his team sacks. Like, if they can get just a little someone else to help out, like I think this defense can work. And like I said, I like Ryan Nielsen, but I also like Mike Caldwell.
Yeah, definitely. I think with Walker, it might always be he eats against bad tackles and he's a little bit always power dependent, right? I don't know if he'll ever be the best technician, but it's no joke, his power. Like, if you can't anchor down, like, he is going to destroy you. And there's not a lot of right tackles in this division that I think can hang with him, right? So he might get 6 games against not Laramie Tunsil, but maybe it's Titus Howard, right? Like, I think that especially the other teams in this division, like, it's not the greatest offensive lines across the board, I'd say. So yeah, this Jaguars pass rush could definitely make a difference when they're fighting for these division wins.
Yeah, they also added Eric Armstead. We should talk, like, just quickly add it in. Like, he was 10th in pass rush win rate last year. I know his run defense fell off the last couple of years, but he can still get after the quarterback. So I think this defense can easily be 10th again in like an adjusted schedule efficiency. So my breakup player was Brian Thomas Jr., which I have to see if we're getting to our breakup player before the end. Do you have someone else besides Brian Thomas Jr.?
Maybe Andre Sisco. I'm a fan of him. He was someone I haven't really studied necessarily, but just in the games, you can tell that he's someone who's willing to take chances as a safety and willing to bite on things a little bit early, and then he's got all this athleticism. So his big plays are just huge. He's made some really high-end safety plays, and if he can get just more and more consistent, I think his ceiling is incredibly high, and maybe he can be that real second All-Pro or X factor in that secondary. Not that Tyson Campbell has made All-Pro, but I believe that Tyson Campbell has played at that level before. And if him and Sisco can really pop each of them, maybe that's enough to carry some of the weaker links.
Okay, so you have the Colts making the playoffs. You have the Texans making the playoffs. Do you have a third team making the playoffs from the AFC South and the Jacksonville Jaguars?
I have them in third, but I don't think they'll quite make the playoffs in a tough AFC. Again, if you didn't get better, I think you got worse. And I think that although I love Brian Thomas Jr., I think that he is exciting enough to me that I believe there is meat on the bone to get better here over Calvin Ridley. Just too many off-season moves that left me shaking my head for the Jaguars this year. I think I don't know. You've got Peterson and you've got Trent Baalke, and I think, and Press Taylor. I like Lawrence, but I don't know about the staff and the coaching staff, or the front office and coaching staff here building a real winner. I think that they just miss out.
I loved when I was working the news desk the game when they had all the clown faces, all the fans, clown stuff for Trent Baalke. Like, and they still didn't fire him. The entire city rallied against the general manager, and he stuck around somehow. Yeah, Press Taylor and Trent Baalke have something on the ownership of Jacksonville and Sean Kahn. So I actually have them making the playoffs. I'm higher on them than you are. I have them 10-7 record. I'm buying the Trevor Lawrence big payday and the big raise in play level. I think they can do it. I think, like, they were 8-3 through 11 games last year. Then they just got hampered by injuries. Like, they were, just avoid the late season collapse. Like, maybe, like, if you go 8-3, don't lose 5 of your last 6. You know, like, I think they'll figure it out. So I have them finishing second in this division and making the playoffs. All right, last team, the Tennessee Titans. Come on down. We're finishing it off the AFC South with you. 26 in total DVOA last year, 25th in offensive DVOA, 18th in defensive DVOA. And this is a team that did a complete 180 in team philosophy. You go from Mike Vrabel, the big tough defensive mind, to Brian Callahan and to Sean McVay, Zach Taylor coach. And like I said, like, this is a team that ran the ball. It's going to look a little different this year. What is your big question with the Tennessee Titans offense this season?
What's it going to look like with Callahan, really? Is this they've been built one way for so long, running through Derrick Henry. How different is it going to be? And I think the answer is going to be extremely different. I think that this is going to look a little bit like what Burrow has been doing these last few years, where he's in gun and he's asked to drop back and read things out and play 11 personnel and target down the field with full field read passes. Like, I think that Levis is going to be asked to fully decipher all of that. And while that makes the ceiling for the offense pretty high, it also might, I don't know if the talent is quite there to pull off that kind of philosophy, if that's what they're going for. But they added Tony Pollard. He came from an offense that was shotgun pass heavy. They added Tyler Boyd. He came from an offense that was shotgun pass heavy. They added Calvin Ridley. He came from an offense that wanted to get in gun and pass the ball a lot. Like, that kind of is what it's shaping up to be. So my question is, like, can Levis handle it? And is that actually what their plan is?
So the Cincinnati Bengals during Brian Callen's tenure there finished second. They're at the second highest pass rate over expectation. So like, this is, like I said, they're going to air it out with Levis. Like they're telling you what they're going to do by adding Calvin Ridley and spending money around him and focusing on building with their second year quarterback. Where are you on Will Levis? Do you think like he can make this leap and be a top 10 quarterback?
Top 10, I don't think so. I think his pocket presence is going to be a bit too shaky for that. It's the thing that got him at Kentucky, I would say, is just holding on to the ball and being a little bit oblivious. The good news for that is sometimes he stands in there beautifully and hits like the most gorgeous downfield throw you'll ever see in your life. There's some really high-end reps from him. If he can kind of speed up that internal clock and keep all the fearlessness maneuvering things, he does have a high ceiling because he's got the arm talent. But we just haven't quite seen that from him yet. Even when he was in as a starter last year, I know he's behind a terrible offensive line. You still saw some of the bad sacks, the high rate of sacks. This offensive line is good, but Petit Frere is still their starting tackle on the right side. Latham, I don't know if he's going to come in and look like an all-pro right away. I don't. Boyd, Hopkins, Ridley, it's a very old receiver room. If their plan is to drop back and throw it all over the place, like, I think there's three better teams in this division who, first of all, can be more balanced. And second of all, if they had to play that way, like, they could do it even a better job than the Titans could. And that's the Titans' whole plan. So I don't know how much I believe in their offense compared to the other ones in this division.
Will Levis might not ever be a top 10 quarterback, but he will be a top 10 fun player to watch and funny player to watch. There was a clip of like someone put like circus music around some of his plays, and just like, he is chaotic. Like, he's like, you hold your breath when he escapes the pocket. Like, he starts to jump over guys, truck guys. He's a funny player. If you want some like Levis like encouragement, they didn't really trust him to throw a lot on early downs last year. Like the Tennessee Brass just didn't trust any quarterback to throw on early downs. It was give Derrick Henry the ball in these heavy boxes, and we'll see if it works. But on first downs in the first three quarters of games last year, Will Levis was 10th in EPA per play and first in air yards. So, like, when they did let him throw on early downs, it sort of worked. That's really the only stat I could dig up that was like Will Levis positive. There wasn't a ton out there. It was a small sample size and whatnot. So I don't know what to expect from him. I think he's fun. I think he's got a cannon in an arm. He can make every throw on the field. But you brought up like the weapons around him. Like DeAndre Hopkins is a year older, and they relied so much on him. Last year, 45% of the team's air yards was DeAndre Hopkins. That is a wacky number. Tyler Boyd coming over from Cincinnati, a friendly face, from Brian Callahan's offense. He was awful last year, negative 15.9% DVOA last year, just a very inefficient wide receiver. He has to play the slot, basically. So that means you can't really move Ridley in the slot, where I think he's better. So, like, how is that going to work out? Is Traylon Burks going to take a step up? You brought up the offensive line. I like the left side of it. Like, I like Latham coming out of college. I like Skoronski as a left guard. I think Cushenberry's severely underrated. However, the right side is an issue.
Yep.
Yeah. So, do you anything else on the Titans offense?
Not really. We'll see. I like maybe keep an eye on Tyjae Spears. I know he ranked very highly in all the elusiveness ratings last year. He's someone who can break a lot of tackles, maybe in a different running scheme. I might rather draft him in fantasy and keep an eye on him winning the starting job over Pollard, who kind of disappointed when he had that opportunity last season. I'm excited to watch Spears, but it doesn't necessarily change my opinion on the offense. Just maybe that's the breakout player. I know we were supposed to talk about them at that.
Yeah, he was my breakout player. You're right. Fourth in elusiveness rating. So like you said, he was up there 12th in yards created. He dropped in the draft because of some injury concerns. Like, I thought he was like electric coming out of Tulane. I was really high on him. So I'm excited from this. I wish they didn't sign Tony Pollard, to be honest. I wish they just gave him the reins. Like, I wish they just let him take it, but we'll see. He's awesome. I like him a lot. All right, defensive side of the ball. I love the Denard Wilson hire. He should not have ever left the Philadelphia Eagles building. I was really disappointed when he didn't get the DC job after Jonathan Gannon left. I thought he was a clear good hire there. And then, of course, they go with Sean Desai and then Matt Patricia, and it falls apart. So I think this is a great hire, and they have some talent here. What is your question about the Titans defense?
My question would be the edge rushers here. They've got Arden Key. They've got Harold Landry. They've got Shane Ray. And I guess another big question would be like, what will Tavondre Sweat give them as the second round pick? That was kind of a shocking selection to me when they took him that early. He's someone who kind of offers you just one thing as far as I can tell, which is just clogging the space in the middle of the field. It's impossible to move him, but you can always run around him. And he doesn't offer much as a pass rusher. So I really do like what this defense has got. But the front seven still, outside of Jeffrey Simmons, I've got some questions about.
Yeah, Sebastian Joseph Day, they're hoping they can get like we have him next to a great tackle like we had in Aaron Donald in LA. See if he can play well. But he's getting up there in age. Tavondre Sweat's a very interesting player. Elite run stuffer at Texas, but he got a DUI before the draft. He did not show up to OT. Theo, I don't know if you saw this because he had an injury.
Yes.
And JC Latham was like openly saying, I'm worried about him. Like having your fellow rookie openly telling the media that you're worried about him. I see how that works out. But I like the pairing of him and Jeffrey Simmons. I like the idea of it. Harold Landry just didn't miss a beat last year. 10.5 sacks, 40 pressures. There's talent here. Like I really do think that this could be like a sneaky top 10 defense if everything comes together.
Yeah, I guess I don't really have a question about the edge rushers. I just have a question about everything. Like there's so many just names here: Quandre Diggs, L'Jarius Sneed, Chidobe Awuzie, Kenneth Murray Jr. These are not guys who were here last year, right? They've built it based on free agent additions in a way that you don't see all the time, especially for a team that's contending for fourth in the division. They've, that's their expected.
That's the thing. Like
they don't think they are, right? They've poured so much money.
Yeah, I wanted to bring this up at the end. Like they think they're the Houston Texans this year. Like they have the rookie quarterback. They spent $400 million this offseason, the most in the NFL by a mile. So, this is probably the fourth best team in the division, but they don't think that.
Yeah, I guess I'm changing my question. The edge rushers, I guess I don't actually have any questions about. Maybe just Vrabel missing. Like, is there going to be the same kind of toughness and the same? Like, it seemed like no matter who the defensive personnel was, the Titans were kind of always able to eke out some success under Vrabel. Now Vrabel is gone because there were communication errors between him and the ownership. Now everybody seems to be on the same page, and that page is buy, like spend money. So what is more valuable, like Vrabel and his leadership, or is money going to talk more? So it's probably going to be money, though. It's probably going to be money, and if you pay for talent, you've got talent, and I agree with you. This is kind of a sneaky unit. I don't mind buying an entire secondary, and I think Jeffrey Simmons is going to have a much better year than he did kind of banged up last year. So I'm with you. I'm more excited about the defense than the offense.
For sure. Roger McCreary also resurrected his career in the slot. Well, not resurrected, but he was not very good on the outside. Goes to the inside, was good against the run. Like L'Jarius Sneed only allowed 5 yards per target, and he got targeted a ton last year, and he still succeeded. Like he said, bring it, and it worked. So yeah, like the more I've looked at this event, this is the team I talked about before with the Colts. I was like, but when I looked at this team in this unit, I was more higher than I thought they would be. So I guess before prediction time, who's your breakout player?
I'll go with maybe Elijah Molden. He's kind of the name that's still there in this secondary. There's all the new guys, but I think that Molden was an interesting player coming out of Washington, very versatile, has played well when he's gotten on the field, and I think he's going to have an opportunity. I know they signed Quandre Diggs recently, just another name they've added, and Jamal Adams, but I'm interested to see what Molden is able to do now that his time has kind of maybe come.
I was a big Elijah Molden guy coming out of the draft. I was surprised he fell to the third round. Like he fell to the end of the third round too. I think he was like pick 98, 99 or something like that. And I loved him coming out of Washington. Okay, so my prediction, Theo, I really wanted to put the Tennessee Titans in the playoffs. I'm not going to lie. I didn't know if that was a little too bold. I didn't know if I was going to drink in the Will Levis milk a little too early, buying into this defense a little too much.
The mayonnaise.
Yeah, the mayonnaise. It was the mayonnaise thing. I couldn't do. I really wanted to. I just couldn't get there. I have them finishing third or fourth in this division, but I'm throwing it out there. If they do pop, I'm on the bandwagon, and I'm going to say I told Theo Ash at the beginning of the year that they were going to make the playoffs, even though I didn't. But I think they're going to be feisty. I think they could surprise some people, but I just think there's too many other good teams in the AFC.
I could see them finishing above the Jaguars because they made improvements and the Jaguars kind of didn't. And if you're not careful, that's the kind of thing that can get you beat in past. But man, over the Texans and Colts, I can't see it. I got the Titans finishing fourth. Maybe they can be feisty, finish third. But I don't know if this offense is going to be playoff level.
All right, Theo, that was fun. AFC South complete. Theo, before you go, you plug in where the listeners can find your work. You just got the Pro Football Network stuff. Very exciting stuff. I love talking ball with you. Tell the listeners where they can find you.
It's gotten to be so many places at this point. This is another 30 minutes, but you can find me at Theo Ash NFL on Twitter, on TikTok. You can find me as one of the co-hosts of the Stay Hot podcast and my own podcast, Your Football Opinion, over on the Pro Football Network YouTube and wherever you consume your audio podcasts as well. I'm also on the PFN Fantasy podcast with Kyle Soppe and Tate. This is bad. We're only on our third episode. I forgot my co-host's first name. Tater.
Theo, you're the absolute man.
Derek Tate. That is my fault, Derek. You're, bruh. But I've only been on there a couple of times.
Hey, now you won't forget it. Now you won't forget it.
I won't forget. Hey, I got there. I got there eventually. I'm bad with names, but yeah, you can find me a whole bunch of places. But if you follow my Twitter, that's a pretty good Theo Ash NFL.
All right, Theo, like I said,
place where I'll post it.
Like I said, absolute man. Love talking ball with you. Very smart, very knowledgeable. If you haven't listened to the all division previews, we're about 4 or 5 in by the time you listen to this. Make sure to check out the other ones. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast. Make sure to subscribe to that YouTube channel. Make sure to check out our sponsor, BetterHelp, and we will talk to you later.